Announced officially on March 17th, 2026, the operation referred to as Total Extermination is being framed as a joint effort between Ecuadorian forces and U.S. backing. Officially, it's about drug organizations, armed groups, and security stabilization. But listen carefully to the language used by Assistant of Secretary of War, Joseph F. Humire, because when they say armed forces in Latin America, that has never just meant cartels. Historically, that included guerrilla movements, indigenous or native resistance, leftist political militias, and anyone considered a destabilizing force to U.S. interests. And that distinction matters because once you blur that line, anyone can become a target. Now let's talk about what actually is being reported. In Sucumbíos, right along the border of Colombia, multiple accounts claim a cattle and dairy farm was bombed, civilian structures nearby were hit, and fire and destruction spread into surrounding areas. And this isn't just any region, this is the Amazon. This is the most biodiverse ecosystems on Earth. It's also one of the most resource rich. And historically, those two things, resources and militarization, always go together. Ecuador wasn't always seen as a major narco state. That changed over the last decade. Why? Because Ecuador sits between two of the largest cocaine producers in the world, Colombia and Peru. And it became a transit corridor. Ports like Guayaquil turned into export routes, and cartel influence grew, and obviously violence increased. But here's the part that no one really says. Ecuador's instability didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened alongside economic restructuring, political shifts, external pressure, and increased foreign involvement, because instability creates justification, and justification creates permission. But to really understand what is happening right now, we need to understand Ecuador's political history and its relationship with the United States, because this did not start today. The United States' involvement with Ecuador goes back to the early 20th century, but it becomes strategic during the Cold War. That's when the U.S. begins strengthening ties across Latin America to prevent the spread of leftist governments after the Cuban Revolution. In Ecuador, this meant military cooperation, economic influence, and political alignment with anti-leftist agendas. So by the late 1990s, the relationship becomes very real on the ground. The U.S. establishes a major military presence at Manta Air Base. Officially, it was for counter-narcotics operations, but like many U.S. bases in the region, it also gave strategic access to the Pacific and surveillance across northern South America. Now, here's where it gets important. Ecuador has not always been right-wing. In fact, one of the most defining presidents in modern Ecuadorian history was Rafael Correa, who was president from 2007 to 2017. Correa was a leftist, and not just mildly, he was part of the pink tide in Latin America. That wave included leaders like Chavez in Venezuela and Evo Morales in Bolivia. Correa rejected U.S. military presence, closed the Manta Air Base in 2009, and strengthened ties with China and regional allies. He also increased state control over resources, and under his leadership, Ecuador was actually more stable compared to what we see today. Lower violence, stronger internal control. So what happened? After Correa, everything starts to change. His successor, Lenín Moreno, who was president from 2017 to 2021, was originally from the same political movement, but he pivoted, and hard. Moreno reopened relationships with the U.S., shifted towards more market-friendly policies, reduced state control, aligned more with Western economic systems. Then comes Guillermo Lasso from 2021 to 2023, a conservative pro-business president. And under his administration, security conditions worsened. Prison violence exploded, and drug trafficking networks expanded, and Ecuador began being labeled as one of the most dangerous countries in the region. And now Ecuador is under Daniel Noboa, a young right-leaning president. And now this is key. The rise in violence we're seeing today did not happen under a leftist government. It escalated during the shift away from Correa. And why does that matter? Because the narrative they use now is Ecuador is unstable, cartels are taking over, we need military intervention. But that instability that they are talking about came after a major political shift, and historically in Latin America, moments like this often lead to foreign-backed security operations and expanded military presence and a deeper geopolitical control. Now, we cannot understand what's happening in Ecuador without understanding Colombia, because we've seen this before. In the early 2000s, the US launched Plan Colombia, a multi-billion-dollar military and anti-drug initiative. And on paper, it targeted cocaine production, cartels, and guerrilla groups like FARC. In reality, though, it also militarized rural regions, displaced civilians, strengthened state-aligned forces, and expanded U.S. military presence. It totally blurred the line between drug war and counterinsurgency. And now we're seeing similar language again. This is not just Ecuador. This is a pattern. Across Latin America, U.S. involvement has followed a consistent logic: prevent leftist governments, secure economic interest, and maintain regional influence. Look at El Salvador, Costa Rica, Guatemala, from Cold War interventions to anti-drug operations to modern security partnerships. The justification changes, but the structure stays the same. So let's go even deeper, because this isn't just about drugs. The Amazon region, especially areas like Sucumbíos, is oil-rich, strategically located, and environmentally critical. And we know that historically, resource-heavy regions attract militarization, foreign investment, and security operations, because controlling territory means controlling energy, land, and future power. This is where we zoom out to the new strategy called the Shield of the Americas, a network of military cooperation, intelligence sharing, and security operations across multiple countries. The justification: organized crime, migration, and of course, regional instability. But the effect? Expanded military footprint, coordinated control, and increased U.S. influence. And if total extermination is the language being used, then we have to ask ourselves, who exactly is being exterminated? A dairy farm was bombed. Homes were reportedly hit. And Amazon region is now part of a military operation with a name that should make everyone uncomfortable. And history tells us this doesn't stay contained. It spreads from Colombia to Ecuador to the rest of the region. This isn't just about one operation. This is about a pattern. And patterns tell you what's coming next. They said it was about drugs. They always say that. But history shows it's never just about drugs. And here's the thing. If they have to use a name like total extermination, that is not a name we use to stabilize. That is a name for war.